At about the same time in this discussion last night, the question of energy came up. It came up in a couple of contexts, but the discussion was about energy independence. Senator McCain said, we have to have nuclear power. We already have nuclear power in South Carolina. We have to stop sending $700 billion a year to countries that don't like us very much, and then says it's wind, tide, solar, natural gas, nuclear, offshore drilling, which Senator Obama has opposed. In fact, later on, Senator Obama does talk about looking into offshore drilling. It was not an absolute categorical rejection of it. But take the energy question and bring it into that South Carolina context, nuclear and offshore drilling specifically.
Yeah, and you're right. We do have nuclear power in the state, but I think we could have 1 or 2 more plants. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, up in the Cherokee area, Duke Power is looking at building another plant. And for the cost, of bringing down the cost of energy, but also I think it creates, tens of thousands of high-paying jobs for our citizens in South Carolina. If France can go 80% nuclear, I don't understand why we can't develop more nuclear here in our country. So I think we should. I also think that we should look at offshore, look at out in the Atlantic, natural gas resources. And if it's economically feasible, and we can do that safe, without damaging the environment, or at least have safeguards to help us in that area, we should do it also. It would create, it would really help the economy in South Carolina.
To what degree?
I think in jobs creation, but also in power creation. And bringing down the cost of power, but also selling that possibly to Georgia and North Carolina.
Selling what with the
nuclear
power
energy, yeah, nuclear power, possibly natural gas.
In the interest of full disclosure, let me tell you that in my professional life, not my academic life, but my professional life, I have been associated with people who are in the nuclear business, okay? So you should understand that. I have never fully understood, and this is really one of the reasons I went to work for these people, why there's such an aversion to nuclear energy. I just haven't. Do you know not one soul has ever been killed or seriously injured in the generation of nuclear electricity in this country? Not one. So I think that nuclear does have a role to play in our country's energy future. I think it has to be circumscribed with many, many, many safety concerns and to ensure the safety, the viability, and the ability to take care of the waste that's generated by nuclear energy. I do not look with any great angst with additional nuclear power plants. Generates 0 emissions. Coal and even natural gas-fired generation of electricity creates a great deal of emissions that are damaging to the atmosphere. So I don't think our energy future should be overwhelmingly vested with nuclear, but I think nuclear has a role in that. As for these alternative renewable sources of energy, if we as a nation had continued to do what Jimmy Carter asked us to do in 1976, we would be energy independent from the rest of the world now. That's a fact. And we didn't. It was undone, and we're here where we are. We need tax breaks. We need incentives. We need money for research and development, for wind, for bio, for additional hydro, which is quite limited, for all of these other alternatives. And Senator Obama has supported tax breaks for these alternative forms of energy. We have 3 to 5, depending on what you hear, percent of the world's oil reserves. We use 25% of the world's oil. That's not fair. It's not healthy, either internationally or in terms of our own physical health, and we need to change that, and I think Senator Obama has a thoroughgoing proposal to do just that.
What about offshore drilling off the South Carolina coast?
I have no particular angst about offshore drilling if it's done properly. Sorry.
It's a very nice ringtone.
I'm sorry. If we have proper research and proper protection, or offshore drilling does not bother me. Now, I do think this, that in contemplation of South Carolina specifically, in terms of South Carolina specifically, our number one industry now is leisure, retirement, the beaches. And we've got to make sure that whatever offshore drilling takes place in South Carolina or off the shores of South Carolina has to be done so that it will not contaminate or foul those beaches. We can't do that. It is such a huge part of our state economic base, we can't afford to take any risk. But as a proposition, I don't have any categorical problem with that.
For what it's worth, I was in Houston over the weekend and in contact with a number of folks in the energy industry. And what they are looking at is drilling that would not be, as it is in, say, the Santa Barbara Channel in California, where you can see the oil wells. It would be 12, 13 miles out, and they would be like little rowboat specks on the horizon. But it's certainly a legitimate concern.